Umuoziri was a quiet village where the people lived by the laws of the ancestors. They believed that peace came from obedience, obedience to the gods, to the land, and to the spirits of those who came before them. Nothing in the village was more feared than breaking tradition. Long ago, there had been war between Umuoziri and the nearby village of Odogba. It started with a fight over farmland, but ended in blood, curses, and death. Many families were destroyed. Even after the fighting stopped, the pain stayed. The elders from both villages made a final decision. No child of Umuoziri shall ever marry a child of Odogba. Their blood must never mix again. This rule became sacred. It was passed from father to son, from mother to daughter. People obeyed it without question. It was not just a rule, it was a warning. But in every village, there are stories people don't say too loudly. Stories they whisper in the evening when the fire is low. Stories of things that should not have happened, but did. Adao-Lisa was the daughter of the chief priest of Umuoziri. Her name was spoken with pride and fear. She was beautiful, calm, and raised to serve the gods. Chikazi was a young carver from Odogba, known for his gentle nature and the way he could make wood sing beneath his fingers. They were never supposed to meet, but they did. And what grew between them was not friendship. It was love, true, dangerous, and completely forbidden. People still talk about them, not because they lived happily ever after, but because they loved with a kind of fire that dared to break the laws of the land. And in doing so, they paid a price no one could have imagined. The New Yam Festival in Umuoziri was the most joyful time of the year. Drums echoed across the hills, palm wine flowed like water, and laughter filled the air. Men wore wrappers with bold patterns, women tied bright headscarves, and children chased each other around the village square. Adao-Lisa sat beside her mother, watching the celebration in silence. She wore a white wrapper and coral beads around her neck. Her skin glowed under the sun. Everyone who saw her knew who she was, the daughter of Chief Priest Ezenwa, a girl chosen for the gods. People bowed slightly when they passed her. Even the elders greeted her with respect. She was sacred, untouchable. Chikazi had come from Odogba with a reconciliation group. His village and Umuoziri were trying to build peace after decades of quiet hatred. He had never been to Umuoziri before, but he had heard stories of their warriors, their priests, their power. He was not dressed like a warrior. He wore a simple wrapper and carried a carved walking stick, not because he needed it, but because he had made it with his own hands. Chikazi was known in Odogba for his carvings, smooth flutes, stools, drums, and sacred masks. He carved with patience and heart. When the dancers entered the square for the Nkwa Umuagbo, the whole village cheered. The girls moved in rhythm, their feet light, their faces full of grace. As the drums quickened, one of the girls turned in a perfect spin, and for a second the crowd parted. Chikazi looked up. Adao-Lisa looked up. Their eyes met, just for a heartbeat. But something passed between them, something soft, something electric, something neither of them could name. She looked away quickly, her hands tightening on her lap. He blinked and looked down at the ground, pretending to adjust his wrapper. But both of them felt it. It was like air had changed around them. She was the daughter of the high priest. He was the son of a village their people still distrusted. They were strangers from worlds that were never meant to touch. But something had been planted in that single glance. And even though no one else noticed, both of them knew, deep inside, that something had started. something dangerous. They met under the cover of night, where no eyes could follow and no voices could whisper. The Udala tree stood tall near the banks of the Azu River, its branches wide like arms stretching to hide them. It was their secret place, where only the stars and the wind listened. Chickasee would arrive first, always early, with his carved flute in hand. He would sit beneath the tree and play soft notes into the night air, letting the music speak what words could not. The flute was made from light wood, smooth and warm to the touch, shaped by his hands with care and love. Adao Lisa would come quietly, her white wrapper trailing behind her like moonlight. Her heart would beat fast each time, not just from fear of being seen, but from the way his eyes lit up the moment he saw her. There, by the river, they were no longer children of enemy villages. They were just two young hearts, discovering what it meant to feel alive. Chickasee told her stories, of stars that guided lost fishermen, of birds that only sang when lovers were near, of trees that bent when hearts were broken. His voice was gentle, like the breeze over the water. And when he laughed, she laughed too, even if she didn't understand the joke. Adao Lisa spoke too, but not the way she did in the village. Under the Udala tree, her voice was freer. She talked about the weight she carried as the high priest's daughter, how every step she took had to be perfect, how her life already belonged to the gods. She whispered dreams she had never spoken to anyone. Dreams of walking barefoot in another town. Dreams of learning to write her name in English. Dreams of dancing not for rituals, but just because she wanted to. Chickasee listened with his whole heart. Every word from her lips was a treasure. But joy was never far from sorrow. One night, as they sat hand in hand, her voice broke. "My father has promised me to Ichi Adalai," she said, barely above a whisper. Chickasee's fingers went still around the flute. Ichi Adalai was an elder, wealthy, respected, and older than even her father. He had wives already. He was powerful in the council. And he had offered 10 goats and 3 fat yams for Adao Lisa's hand. She looked at Chickasee with tears swimming in her eyes. "I don't want to be his wife," she said. "I don't want to belong to anyone I don't love." Chickasee said nothing for a long moment. Then he took her hand and pressed it to his chest. "You are not a thing to be owned," he said quietly. "You are a light, and I will not let them cover you." The wind carried the sound of the river, calm and quiet. But their hearts knew a storm was coming. The night felt like any other. The moon was full and bright, casting silver light over the Udala tree. Chickasee and Adao Lisa sat close, her head resting gently on his shoulder. The air between them was quiet but full, like a heartbeat holding its breath. Then, for the first time, he leaned in and kissed her. It was soft, tender, the kind of kiss that says, "I see you," even when the world chooses not to. But they were not alone. Hiding behind a bush nearby was a small boy from Umuaziri, a restless child who had followed Adao Lisa out of curiosity. He had seen everything. And before dawn, his little feet had carried the secret straight to Ichi Adalai. By morning, the village square boiled with whispers. Before the sun reached the middle of the sky, Chickasee was dragged from his sleeping mat by men with red bands on their arms. They beat him without mercy, fists, canes, curses. Blood mixed with the dust beneath his body. He did not beg. He did not scream. "You are lucky," spat one of the elders. "If your head was not kneaded whole for your people, we would feed it to the river." They banished him that same day, throwing his flute into the fire and forcing him to walk back to Odogba with torn clothes and bruised bones. Lisa never saw it happen. Her father had locked her inside the sacred shrine before dawn broke. The shrine was dark, cold, and smelled of old smoke and bitter herbs. She was not allowed to speak. She was not allowed to cry. A bowl of plain water was left at the doorway each morning, but no one looked her in the eye. Chief Priest Ezenwa stood outside the shrine with ash on his forehead and fury in his voice. "You have stained the blood of your mother," he thundered. "You have mocked the gods who trusted us. You have touched a stranger with your heart, and now the spirits turn their faces from us." He raised his staff and cursed the love between her and Chickasee, calling it a plague, a shame, a fire that must be quenched before it spread. Inside the shrine, Lisa sat on the cold floor, her arms wrapped around her knees. She did not speak. She did not sleep. But she never stopped whispering his name in her heart. Not everyone in the shrine agreed with the punishment. Ngozi, a young shrine girl with soft steps and curious eyes, saw the pain in Lisa's silence. She brought her water with warm hands, placed cola beside her mat, and whispered kind words when no one was listening. One evening, as the stars began to bloom, Ngozi slipped a small folded palm leaf beneath Lisa's sleeping mat. Inside, written in trembling charcoal strokes, was a message. "Adawem, I don't know if you still breathe me into your dreams, but I still carve your name into every piece of what I touch." Lisa pressed the note to her chest, and tears filled her eyes for the first time in days. She didn't have paper or ink, so she crushed red hibiscus petals and mixed them with ash. On a piece of cloth torn from her wrapper, she wrote back, "The gods may close my lips, but they cannot stop my soul from reaching you. I see you in every spark of light." Ngozi became the thread between them, slipping in and out of shadows, carrying hope in the folds of her waist beads. Sometimes it was notes. Sometimes a bead from Lisa's anklet, or a carving from Chickasee shaped like a dove. They timed the messages with fireflies. When the night blinked bright 3 times, Ngozi would appear. One night, Chickasee's message came with a tiny piece of carved wood shaped like a heart. "Adawem, if the earth swallows me, I will still find you in the afterlight." Lisa read it over and over again, even when the ink began to fade. Back in Odogba, by the riverbank, Chickasee had begun carving something bigger than a flute or stool. He worked in secret, by moonlight, using only the quiet tools of a man in love. He was building a canoe, a vessel strong enough to carry them away from 2 villages, 2 curses, 2 pasts, towards something no one could give them: freedom. The full moon rose like a burning eye in the sky. Inside the shrine, Lisa waited with her breath trapped in her chest. Ngozi crept in silently, holding a small clay jar of ashes and herbs. "Drink this," she whispered. "It will make you unseen by any eyes that do not love you." Lisa took the bitter drink without question. Her heart was already louder than any drum. They moved like shadows through the narrow shrine paths. Ngozi had stolen the keys from the priest's belt and left the gate ajar. At the edge of the shrine wall, they hugged tightly. "I will light 7 candles for you," Ngozi said, her voice shaking. "Go, sister. Fly." Lisa ran barefoot through the night, past trees and sleeping huts, past the silent market square and down the hidden trail that led to Azu River. Chickasee stood waiting at the bank, soaked in sweat and moonlight. His canoe, small, sturdy, hand-carved, bobbed gently in the water. When he saw her, his face broke into a smile brighter than fire. They ran into each other's arms. The kiss they shared tasted like salt, like fear, like forever. I thought they had kept you from me, he whispered. No one can, she said. Not even the gods. They climbed into the canoe. He pushed it into the water with trembling hands. The river welcomed them, calm at first. The paddles sliced through the silence as they moved deeper into the night. But the peace didn't last. From the sky, a roar cracked open the stars. Lightning streaked across the heavens like a whip of fire. Thunder slammed through the trees. The river stirred, slow at first, then violently, like a beast waking from sleep. Rain poured down in sheets, blinding their eyes. The canoe rocked left, then right. The wind screamed like an angry spirit. Adao-Lisa clung to Chikazi's arm. "A Madioha," she whispered. The god of thunder was awake. Another flash. Another roar. Then the river rose. A wave crashed against the side of the canoe, flipping it like a dry leaf. Their hands slipped from each other in the dark, and the water swallowed their names. The river roared like a wounded animal, tossing the canoe and its lovers into the storm. Adao-Lisa struggled in the cold water, gasping for breath. The waves slapped her face, pulled at her wrapper, dragged her down. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Then, strong arms wrapped around her waist. "Chikazi!" He held her tightly, his head above the water, his breath short and sharp. "Hold on to me," he whispered. She tried, but the current was too strong. Her arms were weak. Her legs were heavy. Chikazi used everything he had left. He pushed her up, kept her head above the waves, whispering into her ear, even as the water tried to take him under. "Ihirujiananya, Adao-Lisa, I love you." A final breath, a final push, and then silence. When morning came, the sky was calm again. Fishermen from Umuoziri found Adao-Lisa's body on the riverbank. Her hair tangled with weeds. Her wrapper torn. She was unconscious, her skin cold but still alive. They carried her back to the village in silence. But there was no joy in her return. The elders gathered, faces full of fear and judgment. "This is a sign," one said. "She defied the gods. She brought a Madioha's wrath upon us," said another. "Let her not speak his name again." Her father, Chief Priest Ezenwa, did not look at her. His eyes were like stone. "She is no longer my daughter." They called her cursed, tainted, dangerous. Not once did anyone ask what she had lost. Not once did anyone ask who had died saving her. By sunset, they tied a red cloth around her waist, a mark of exile, and led her past the hills, past the farms, past the last trees of the village. Alone. No food. No home. No goodbye. Adao-Lisa did not cry. Her eyes were dry. But inside her, something had broken beyond fixing. She had loved with her whole heart, and she had paid the price. Adao-Lisa's feet never forgot the dirt of Umuoziri, but it had been years since she had walked its familiar paths. She had found a new life in Saka, a village far from her past. Here, she ran a home for lost girls, children who had no one to care for them, or whose hearts had been broken by the cruelties of life. They called her the widow with no ring, for though she had never married, she wore the grief of a wife who had lost everything. The girls gathered around her at night, their wide eyes full of wonder, listening as she told them stories of courage, of love that could never die, of a river that carried the spirits of those who had loved too deeply. But there was one thing Adao-Lisa did every year. something no one knew but her. Every new yam festival, as the village celebrated the harvest with dances and feasts, she walked alone to the riverbank, carrying a small paper boat. In the boat, she placed a note and a single bead from the necklace Chickasee had carved for her. The note was simple, written in the quiet of her heart. "I have not forgotten, my love. In the wind, in the rain, in the silence between the stars, I feel you. Always." The bead, the same one she had once given him, was her promise that his spirit would never be lost. That no matter how far the years stretched, she would remember. And then she would float the boat down the Yazoo River, watching it drift away on the current. She had not seen Chickasee in this world, but somehow she knew he was near. Perhaps not in body, but in the spaces between the wind, between the clouds. Perhaps in the hearts of those who still loved despite the storms. And one day, when the earth grew tired of holding her, she would be reunited with him, beneath the mighty Udala tree. For the tree had grown strong, just as her love had. The flute Chickasee carved, left to rest against the earth after their escape, had become something more. Over the years, it had sprouted roots and branches, rising into the sky like a living memory, its leaves whispering stories of the love it had witnessed. Lisa stood beneath the tree, letting the wind rustle through the branches. She closed her eyes and smiled softly. "I am here," she whispered. And in that moment, the river's current was calm, as if the world itself had held its breath in a quiet prayer. Years passed, and life moved on. But the villagers of Nsaka, and even those from Umuoziri, still whispered of the woman who loved too deeply, the woman who had no ring, yet carried the heart of a wife forever. They said her paper boat still sailed down the Yazoo River every new yam festival, silent, steady, like a song that could never end. The boats always floated in the same direction, following the current with purpose, carrying the same message from Lisa to the river itself. One day, long after she had passed, a child found the last paper boat she ever sent. It drifted to the edge of the river, caught in the roots of the great Udala tree. The child unrolled the paper and read the note inside, a note that had come to the river like a final blessing. "To Chickasee, you were the rhythm in my silence. I see you in every river. Forever, you're Lisa." The words were simple, but the weight of them stretched across time, across the very hearts of those who still loved deeply, even when they had no one to share it with. The message, whispered with every breeze, lingered in the air for days, as if the river itself carried her love from one soul to another. Love may die in flesh, but in memory it lives eternal. And the river, which had once tried to swallow them, now cradled their love in its eternal embrace. It carried the echoes of Lisa's heart, and the spirit of Chickasee lived in every ripple of the water, every whisper of the leaves in the Udala tree. "No one ever truly leaves," they said, "when they have loved like this. The river remembers." Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories. Turn on your notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.